Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Cryptic Conversations. I'm your host, Tunes from the Crypt. We have another very special episode in store today. Today's guest is a woman named Sophia Persephone. Hailing from London, England, Sophia is a multifaceted individual. She's a writer, painter, and spiritual awakening coach. Her personal journey is a testament to the unpredictable nature of spiritual awakenings. Transitioning from a non spiritual perspective rooted in science and the material world, Sophia underwent a swift and unique awakening, completing her journey in just 3 years. As a channel for the Council of Light and Athena, Sophia has dedicated herself to helping others on their awakening journeys and is demystifying the spiritual awakening process through her coaching practice. Her debut book, How to Get Through the Dark Night of the Soul, Overcoming Spiritual Depression During Awakening, draws from her own experiences and coaching insights, which offers practical guidance for those navigating the complexities of the dark night of the soul. And I'm honored to have her today. So welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. It's an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, so for the listeners, this is actually our second go around. We were
Yes.
encountering some technical difficulties on the last one, so I'm thankful that she's back. She has a great story, and she has a great mission in this life. So I'm really glad that she's back. So to kind of kick things off, I thought I would just give you like a little bit of my backstory and tell the listeners, how I found and connected with you. Um, so yeah, I guess to tell the listeners is if you knew me 5 years ago, I was not someone who was into all this stuff. I was just a regular guy. I was a party guy. I went to raves. I like to drink with my friends, and I was just that person. I would say that my whole life I've always felt a little bit different. I've always been sensitive, but other than that, I wasn't into all this stuff, right? So, I'm coming out with all this stuff more recently. I didn't even know what to call it, to be honest. I just, started looking into it, and I was like, oh, spiritual awakening. So I think that's what I'm having. So yeah, so looking back on my life, I remember as a kid, actually, I'll take it back to when I was a kid, like my first 2, 3 years of life, I would have these very intense nightmares. They would call them night terrors, like very intense. And I would remember, I would wake up or I would be sleeping and I would be like crying and kicking and screaming. And I vaguely remember them. And it wasn't until like a few years ago, my parents started to kind of remind me, like, yeah, we remember when you were a kid, you would have these very intense night terrors. So I don't know if you know anything about that. So there was that, right? And then growing up, like I said, I'm an only child too, so I've always just been like alone, like just alone, and just spending a lot of time in nature, just reflecting on life. What's the meaning of life? And then I started to get into conspiracy theories. I was always into conspiracy theories, just questioning. I knew that there was something more to life than what the Western world was teaching us. I just always knew that there was something more. Fast forward to probably my teenage years, my 20s. That's where my partying and drinking really kind of got out of hand. um, I also had a very strange paranormal experience. I didn't even know what that was. That was in my 20s. And then I got in a car accident in the rain one day. I hydroplaned across the whole freeway and I flipped upside down, and my car was I was flipped upside down on the freeway, and I came out of that car accident, and it was a bad car accident. I came out of it completely fine. And like I remember getting out of the car and checking my limbs, and I'm like, all right, I'm all right. Like, and so that's where I started to believe, like, I think I either have like guardian angels or spirit guides or someone's looking out for me. That's where it started. And then yeah, like into my late 20s, my drinking, I was hanging around with this one guy and this group of people, and my drinking and partying really got out of hand. And there was another car accident that happened where I wasn't driving, my friend was driving, and then it was just like a lot of stress. I think that was my dark night of the soul. It was a lot of financial problems. It was a lot of I was in a dark place, and I cut all those people out of my life, and I was just in this dark place, and I knew that I needed to work on myself. I was like, obviously there's a reason why I'm drinking. Like, so I got sober. Then I went to a therapist. I did some hypnotherapy, and then that led me to an ayahuasca retreat. And then when I went to the ayahuasca retreat, that's where like the shaman, and that whole experience, like I would consider myself a little bit enlightened, awakened. Some things that I've learned now is like, yeah, like we're all one. That
Mm.
death is not the end of this. We're all souls navigating this human experience. Most people have it the other way around. Like, so we're souls navigating this human experience. And so we're all one, right? And so those are some of the things that I've learned along this journey. And so, like I said earlier, it was like, um, I didn't know what to call it, and so I come across the path of spiritual awakenings, and so that's when I looked you up, and that's when I found your information, and so that's what I think I'm having. So I'd love for you to elaborate more. Yeah, what is a spiritual awakening?
Yeah, well, you've pretty much described a very typical journey. The night terrors, by the way, are probably past life memories. For if you were
Ah,
that young, you were probably tapping into something from a previous life. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's also ways you can look at spiritual awakening. There's several processes that are taking place that, can be scientifically described if you like. But fundamentally, what you're doing is you're rediscovering your true soul nature.
mhm.
And then throughout the journey, when you get to sort of the furthest point that you can, which is different for different people, you basically reach your full potential. And that means that you should be able to bring your mission to life, whatever it was you came to this planet to do in this lifetime. By the end of awakening, you should have all the tools you need to bring that into your reality. So really, that's the crux of spiritual awakening potential.
I love that. Okay, and so can you share more about your personal journey and go into detail on how your spiritual awakening unfolded?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it was an odd one. So a bit like you, I had no interest at all in spirituality. Also like you, I was a raver, so I
Oh
kind
yeah.
of knew about sort of alternate realities, but I just hadn't really formulated any opinions really on kind of this spiritual thing. I didn't feel like it was anything to do with me. And then I basically had my epiphany in 2020, just after the COVID lockdowns. I think we'd just gone into the lockdowns, and I met my soul. So I had a waking vision. It was late at night. I was just listening to some music, chilling out before bed, and I heard a voice say to me very clearly, um, it would be really nice to just lie back and listen to the music. I thought, oh yeah, let's do that. So I lay back, and then the voice said to me, you'd see more if you closed your eyes. So I thought, oh yeah, that sounds logical. So I closed my eyes, and then I just had this experience of rotating in space. And I looked down and I saw this little bobbing orange ball of light, and which was kind of sort of waving at me. And I just knew it was my soul. And I had the thought, oh, I'm an immortal soul that's chosen to inhabit this body just for this lifetime. And that was the first time ever that I had even considered that that might be a possibility. And so, following on from that, I spent pretty much the whole night talking with this entity who said, ask me anything. And so I did, because I read a lot of science. I was always very interested in science and quantum mechanics and things like that. So I had quite a lot of questions. And it basically said, consciousness exists outside of the brain. Reincarnation really is a thing. Yes, you are an immortal soul. And so yes, it was a one single life-changing event. And then the next morning, because I always had been sort of analytical and scientific, I started to read all the texts. I started to research, and I didn't go to the spiritual teachings at all. I went to the science. So I was
Mm.
reading like Gary Schwartz or Bruce Lipton. So sort of all these people are really on the fringes of modern day science. And what I saw was, after 2 or 3 days of research, that was basically that there wasn't one place you could go to get all the information, but if you looked around, you could find scientific evidence that everything I had been told was true. And honestly, since that day, nothing has ever happened to dissuade me that what I was told was correct. And I do analyze and I do check it. So, excuse me. So yes, so then basically I went into an enormously accelerated awakening. I now know, obviously coaching, I know typically it takes a bit longer. I was ascended within 3 years. So in 2023, I sort of reached the ascension point, which I thought at the time was the end of awakening. But actually, I've become aware recently that there is a final stage, which is called actualization. I'm actually going through that at the moment.
Oh wow.
Uh, Yeah, I'm about halfway through, so I don't know loads about it, and I only know one other person who's going through it, so I can't tell you loads about it. But yes, it was a very very quick. I left a career, I left a marriage, I left my country and moved abroad. I started painting full time, started writing books. My entire friendship group changed. I left family members behind, close family members I now have no contact with. So it really was just a complete transformation of my life and myself, my psyche.
Wow, yeah, that's amazing, man. Yeah, yeah. As I go along my journey, yeah, it just seems like it never ends. It's like there's always more knowledge and more levels, and yeah, I really enjoy having you on, because I know that there's quite a few people out there that are struggling and they don't understand what's going on. So we really gotta have to get this information out there,
Absolutely.
Before we dive more into this whole spiritual awakening process, can you simplify for the listeners, the true nature of this reality? Can you explain, like what is really going on, who we are, what's the point of our existence, and what should we do with all this information?
Yeah, sure. So these obviously are the big questions, the why are we here questions. So let's start at the soul level. So a soul basically is a mind, it's a consciousness, and we're learning machines. That's what we do. So that's the reason for our existence. So we have, these wonderful, rich, creative lives that we live up in the higher dimensions. Those are our real lives, if you like. And we're in constant cycles of development and helping others to develop as well, because obviously we're a collective, we're a community, and we're very much focused on what we can do to bring other people along or other souls along. Excuse me, sorry. I've had a bit of a cold.
No worries.
Um, yes. So we're very focused on development. The challenge for us always was that we're immortal and we're highly intelligent. So the average IQ in Soul World, if we call it that, is 350 IQ points. And I think down here we say you're a genius if you're 140. So
Yeah,
so there's a level of intelligence up there that we processing through a human brain we just can't comprehend right now.
yeah.
um so yeah, so we're super intelligent, we're super creative, and we knew we were going to go through these learning cycles, but we wanted to do them in a way that stimulated us, kept us interested for a long period of time. And so we created not just this dimension, but other dimensions, which are game environments. This is a virtual reality that we come down and inhabit as consciousnesses, and we go through these challenges in our lives, and that's how we learn and develop. And it's we love it. This is the thing we don't understand, because when we incarnate in a human body, first of all, we have, this kind of human suit, which is wired to be negative because that's how humans survive. And then we come down into this environment, which is facing a lot of challenges on many different levels. And it's not consistent with the way we live in the higher dimensions, which is very much based on Zen principles. So we have the ideas down here, we haven't quite embedded them. And it's really, really difficult for us. And that's why so many people are thinking, how can there be a creator? Why, if this is so awful, how can there be a creator, for example? This is a big question I get. And the fact of the matter is the creator didn't make the rules. Okay, so the creator, yes, built these environments, but she, Athena, source energy, inherited the rules. And the rules are that whatever energy we produce must be used. So if you're at a decision point where you can make a good decision, or I don't like the word bad, but let's use it, a bad decision. If you make the bad decision, the negative choice, then you generate negative energy, and that must be reused. So that's why we can see we sort of spiral down into these situations and we feel like there's no way up. But the good news is, because we live in a benevolent universe, good actions carry more weight than negative actions. You get more points, if you like. So it only takes a few of us awakened, really fighting on the side of good, really for this cause of transforming this planet into the way it really should be, to start to reverse that trend. And that's what the Global Enlightenment Project, the Spiritual Awakening mission that is going on right now, that's what that is for. That's why we're seeing all of these people waking up right now, is to reverse the trend in this dimension.
Yeah, I love that. That makes a lot of sense. So what, is everyone meant to awaken? How come some are waking up and others aren't?
Mm. Well, eventually, yes, but we're in really early stages. So what we're doing at the moment is, sorry, when I say we, I mean the council. So what the council is doing at the moment is testing all types of awakening on all different types of people. So you can think of it as a big matrix of sort of test groups. And once we've learned enough, then we'll start rolling out into other areas of the the community, society. The people who are being awakened right now are the higher evolved. So these are people who typically have at soul level have learned at least 70% of their soul lessons. And the reason we do that is because they're much more resilient. So if something goes a bit wrong, that's not going to really throw them off
Mm,
track, certainly in terms of, their next life, etc., that they'll be fine. But we want to make sure that when we start getting down to people who are younger souls, the lowest the soul learning you can have to come into this environment is 40%. So we don't bring people into this game environment unless they've passed at least 40% of their soul lessons.
mm.
But there's a big difference between someone with 40% and someone with, sort of 98% right at the top end. So we're ethical. We're ethical beings, make sure that we're helping people as much as we can through, as you know yourself, what can be a very turbulent journey. So eventually, yes, we will see everyone, but right now we're just testing and going slowly until we have all the data.
So you said, so since I've had an awakening, that means I've passed 70, at least 70% of my soul lessons.
Very probably, yes.
Probably. Okay. And then also there's this other concept that I've seen around more frequently is this concept of the chosen ones. I don't know if it's 140,000 or 144,000 light beings, the chosen ones. Have you heard about that? Is there any truth to that?
That sounds like some different ideas getting mixed up, actually, because there is the number 144, which is important to us. That's the number of souls that Athena, source energy, was given when she instigated our universe, when she decided that yes, we're going to do this thing. She was given 144 souls to help her build it. So that
Mm,
number kind of exists for us mythically, if you like.
mm-hmm.
But the chosen ones, yes, sure, that's just the people who are awakening now. Personally, I don't love the term, because we have to understand that it's a privilege for us, to be able to lead the way like this.
Mm-hmm.
And really, we're doing this to help all the others who
Yeah.
will come after us. It's not really about us, is what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. The word, the concept chosen ones, it sounds kind of egotistical, like, oh, I'm chosen and you aren't, like in reality, we're all chosen, like we're just at different levels and some people will get there eventually. Yeah. So,
That's
so
exactly right.
yeah. So
Yeah.
can you elaborate on the concept of spirit guides and one's higher self?
Yeah, sure. So basically we're energy beings, and you can think of us when we're sort of up in the higher dimensions, we're really just one big huge energy field. So we kind of all bleed into each other, if you like, right? It's only we do take sort of a kind of holographic form so that people can see us and know who we are, but basically that is what we are. And if you think about one sort of area of the field, so let's call it Sophia because that's my higher self. What happens there, this field has lots of functions. It isn't just one field that comes and incarnates and then goes back up and then comes down again. It does lots of different things. So it's got tasks and missions up in the higher dimensions. It's also guiding people who are incarnated. But she has this aspect to her of these discrete consciousnesses who also come down and take human form in this dimension and other dimensions. But it's not all of her that comes down, it's some of her that comes down, just a little bobble off. And so that's the bit that incarnates, the incarnated soul. And the higher self in this instance is still Sophia. So you have kind of little Sophia and big Sophia, if you like. So that's the higher self, usually the same soul. Now, for a small number of individuals, And I was one of them, so it was a little confusing for me during my own journey. You actually skip levels. So I started as Persephone, my soul, when I started to awaken, but I very quickly moved through Persephone up to Sophia. So Sophia was my higher self very, very quickly. So sometimes you go up a layer, and that just basically gives you more perspective, more ability, more access. That's what that's about.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like I'm in the process of connecting to my higher self, and I haven't had an experience of I haven't met my spirit guides yet. I don't know. I try, man. I go out in nature and I meditate and I try and I still haven't connected with them, but I've always had a very strong intuition, like whether it's synchronicities or like a voice or pursuing something. So I've always had that intuition. I wonder if that's my higher self or what that is.
Yeah, it can be higher self or it can be guides. You have someone with you all the time. So you're
Mm,
never alone ever. We're monitored all the time. Quite often at the stage of awakening you're at, you have one primary guide who really focuses in on you, gives you a lot of attention, so that you have consistency. And this is very often either a former avatar of your soul. So if you like a past life individual of yours, or it's one of your soulmates that you've incarnated with lots and lots of times who knows you really, really well. So that or an ancestor as well. It could be a human, from your human ancestry as well. So those are the kind of people who tend to take the primary guide role at this time. If you're having trouble connecting, there are techniques you can try. Automatic writing works very well for a lot of people.
mm,
Uh, Also divination tools, tarot, pendulum, just to give them a way to connect to you.
ah,
So you can ask yes, no questions, are you my guide? Yes, kind of thing.
mm,
But you will find over time it's usually when you're a bit further on, you will get a lot more clarity, sort of in
mm.
higher learning after the spiritual dark night, you will get more clarity.
Okay, yeah. So I feel like it's been a year, a little over a year since my ayahuasca retreat, and I feel like I've
Mm.
been riding on that high of life, just awakened, enlightened. Everything's amazing. But now I feel like I'm kind of losing that connection, and I feel like I'm kind of losing it a little bit. So that's one of the phases, right?
Well, that's interesting. Actually, this is I've literally just made a YouTube video on this today. There are ways that we block our awakening without knowing that we're doing it. Typically, it tracks back to ego and inner child work. So if you haven't really gone down into the depths in meditation to connect with inner child, in fact, inner children, because we all have more than one inner child, which isn't commonly known. Um, you kind of got to get right down into lower mind, bring those entities to you and ask them, what do they need from you? Because basically, they will not let your consciousness ascend while there's unresolved issues down there. They're frightened, they're children.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I may need to work on that then a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, definitely. I'll talk to you offline and give you some techniques.
Okay, sounds good. So how did you become connected to the Council of Light, and how has this connection shaped your mission?
Well, so Sophia is a member of the Council of Light. She's one of the original 12, and she is now my soul. So I sort of moved from Persephone up to Sophia. So obviously, I didn't know that earlier in my awakening. All I just knew was I had these very kind of big names coming to talk to me. So I had a lot of connection with Jesus. I had a lot, still do, a lot of connection with Vishnu, one of the Hindu gods, and this was sort of slightly overwhelming. I didn't really sort of understand why these people would be bothered with me. I had a lot of inner work to do, but then over time it became apparent to me that I was Sophia, and I was meeting Sophia in deep trance, in deep meditation, and and then I learned about the Council of Light. So I was like, oh, right, okay, I'm on the Council of Light, and then basically, all through my awakening, still to this day, I receive daily teachings from whichever member of the council is the expert on the subject. The guys sort of come to me and sort of help bring my learning on. So not just about the awakening process, but about the game, the rules of the game. How does the game work? What's the plan for the earth? Who are the people out there who are in position to be working on these strands of the plan? How do we connect in the future? So There's a lot that they talk to me about.
Okay. So to the average person, even myself who's into all this spiritual stuff, what is the best evidence that we have that this is the truth? You know, yeah,
Yeah, that's a really tricky one, isn't it? Because we have materialist science, which says we must be able to replicate experiments, etc. And we honestly just need to come at this from a completely different direction. We need a blend of science and philosophy,
yeah,
and there's kind of no other way to do it. Although the guys that I mentioned before are giving it a really good go. And to be honest, for me, first of all, at a personal level, so the best evidence for me has been everything that I've ever been told. If I've gone and researched, or I've gone sort of deep inside, examined it, and then looked around me at the way the world behaves, I can see it. I can see these patterns. I can see that what they're telling me is true. But broader on than that, actually, I have a survey, an online survey of people who are awakening. So this is people who self-identify as going through a spiritual awakening. I have over 1,000 respondents now. And what I find is there's a huge segment of people who don't know any other awakeners. Like 2/3 of awakeners only know sort of none or one or two other awakeners, right?
yeah,
Yeah. And also 2/3 had no interest in spirituality before they started to wake up. And yet they all report the same journey, the same sort of elements of the journey, the same kind of connections. They spontaneously tell me about souls that are guiding them, not names that I'm providing for them, ones that they're bringing to me, but I'll have 20 people who come to me with the same name. So it's hard to imagine how could that be happening to so many people if it wasn't true. It doesn't feel like it can be sort of a mass hysteria because these people
hmm
are isolated. They're
yeah.
not connected. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely can relate to that. Like I'm the only one. Like I don't know anybody, so I really appreciate, doing this podcast and speaking with people like you because yeah, I have
Mm.
nobody in my life, and that seems like what it is. So I'd like to ask you too, so let's pretend, like I'm coming to you now telling you that I think I'm going through a spiritual awakening. What questions would you ask to see where I'm at along the journey and how to best guide me through the remainder of the process?
Yeah, sure. Well, there's really clear signs for each of the stages of awakening. So it's very easy to identify. For example, if someone is in early awakening, really what they're starting to do is change their lifestyle, change their eating habits, maybe get out into nature more. People get dogs, this kind of thing. And also start to research. They develop an interest in spirituality, which can come from anywhere. It doesn't necessarily need to come from an awakening, the conscious awakening, the epiphany. It can just be something that sparks their interest, or sort of comes across their path. So if they're in that stage, but they haven't yet had any kind of connection, that sense of connection, I know they're very, very early on. And then really for them, I'm gonna start talking to them about meditation. Well, I talk to everyone about meditation, but really that's the key. Meditation and inner work when you're in these very early stages. But quite a lot of people who come to me, the majority who come to me, are in the connection phase, which is the third stage. And that's the one where you get your conscious awakening, you get your epiphany. So that an epiphany can happen over time, by the way. It doesn't have to be this one sudden event like I had. In fact, the majority are over time. And what usually happens is weird stuff starts to happen in our lives, synchronicities, signs, just weird stuff, weird dreams. Quite often that happens. Our sleep patterns get disrupted. That's something I see. And then we start to think, oh, there's more to this thing. It's not just 3D reality. And then a little further on, as our own symptoms become more pronounced, so like you say, you're sort of riding the wave, aren't you? You have these kind of massive bouts of euphoria. Somewhere along the line, the penny drops. Oh, I'm having a spiritual awakening, and that's kind of the second part of the epiphany. So if I get someone who comes to me at that point, it's very clear to me that they're in connection stage. Often people at that time, more than anything, are looking for answers. They're not just interested in their awakening. They want to understand why are they here, what are they doing. And the drive towards uncovering your purpose at that stage is enormous, but you can't really pursue it. So what happens is the universe sort of dangles the carrot and lets you know, yeah, you're here for a reason, you've got a purpose, but it doesn't give you all the information. And the reason it doesn't do that is because it doesn't want you to start running at it before you're ready. Because really, the connection phase is all about you. It's all internal work. You really just got to work out who you are, solve all your lower mind issues, all of this stuff. So yes, so that's connection. The majority of people who come to me are in that stage. Then obviously you get the spiritual dark night of the soul. This is different to the growth oriented dark night, which I think you described earlier. That one comes pre-conscious awakening and is designed to make you make changes in your life and in yourself. But the spiritual dark night of the soul is actually a hurdle that, if you like, the other side, the other team in this big game that we're all playing, the team who's trying to prevent us all waking up, excuse me, insisted was part of the spiritual awakening process. So it's literally designed to make it harder for us to awaken. But equally, because we use everything, we try to turn every negative into a positive. We have found ways to make that a very useful experience for the people who go through it. So I do get people in that stage. It's very obvious when you go into it, because what happens is everything shuts down and there's no clear external cause. So it just comes out of the blue. One day you're sort of all happy, euphoric, you're meditating. The next day it's all gone. You've got no communication at all. But then when you come out of that into higher learning, actually, this is where the real transformation starts to happen. Higher learning is the big one. And I'm getting more and more people starting to come to me now in this stage, which is really encouraging. Really pleased to see that. And by this point, most people have kind of worked a lot of it out. They don't need loads from me, but usually by this point they are starting to uncover mission. So really what they need help with usually is, what's my mission? Who am I? How do I find out who my soul is? I'm very lucky. I was given a gift during my awakening that I can work out sort of where people come down from on the council, the soul family tree. So I can sort of at least give them a steer in that respect. I can see missions as well because I can access the Akashic records. And then the other thing that usually happens is, like you're probably experiencing, is they get these blocks that they have to clear before they can sort of truly get into the ascension phase. And I don't have anyone in ascension at the moment. It's too early, but a
Oh,
few
wow.
in higher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so your book was about one of your books is about the dark night of the soul, and so you, like you said, there's two main types, right? The pre-conscious dark night of the soul, and then the spiritual dark night of the soul. So, in your coaching practice, what are some patterns or challenges that you've observed among people going through the dark night of the soul?
Well, it's a really interesting phenomenon because it can be very different for different people. Certainly, the growth-oriented dark nights are very individualistic, because with the spiritual dark night, what happens is all of our chakras are closed down to the same degree, and sort of the trapdoor to the higher dimensions is closed. But in the early version, whichever chakra is blocked depends on your personal experience and what you personally need to work on. So it can manifest very, very differently. I've seen people during those phases, like I've seen millionaires lose everything, for
Oh,
example.
wow.
Yeah, like really big lessons in detachment, that kind of thing. So yeah, so the early ones are very individual. The spiritual one is more consistent across the piece, but there are different intensities of it, different levels of intensity. So I had the most severe kind. My chakras went down to 5% of strength, of capacity, which is the lowest that we can have. If we don't have that, we die, basically. And also my trapdoor was completely closed, so I went from being completely clairaudient, speaking with the council every day, all day, every day, to absolute silence, almost just sort of static in the ears almost. But there are other versions which I call them dark night light, where people still maintain a bit of connection. The chakras don't go down too low. But what happens with those ones is they last longer. So it's almost as though, we have to have this much pain, and you can either have it very, very quickly or a bit more slowly. That's what seems to happen.
Wow, yeah, that's interesting that you're talking a lot about the chakras. And so in my ayahuasca retreat, it was a 3 day retreat, and on the first night I only took one cup. I took it easy, and I was seeing some colors and some patterns, and I feel like that kind of opened me up. I saw the spiritual dimension, the spiritual world a little bit. I started to see energies going throughout the room and stuff like that, positive and negative. And then on the second night of the ayahuasca retreat, the shaman, it was weird. It was like he was going around the room, and then everyone's going through their experience, and I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna take it easy. I'm gonna take it easy. I'm only gonna take one cup." And he came over to me and he looked at me and he stopped and he's like, "You go up there and take another cup." He knew I needed
Mm.
another cup. Like, I guess I was being stubborn or whatever, and so I was like, "All right." I was like, or no, I was like, "Do I have to?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I'm not asking you, I'm telling you." And I was like, "All right," And so I went up, took a second cup, and they talk about in the ayahuasca experience, they talk about an experience of dying, and they say like when you feel like you're dying, go towards it, like don't be afraid. And so that's scary, right? And so I remember having that experience where I was laying there, and they refer to it as the grandmother spirit, the madre ayahuasca, and she was like, she like took control of my body almost, and it put me in the fetal position, and I died. I felt like I died. I went towards it, and I died, and I was like, uh oh, like now what, and then I came back, and it like tying it back to the chakras. I remember when I came back and I was laying down on the yoga mat, it felt like all my chakras got rebooted. It was like boom, 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 boom. And as I laid there, yeah,
Absolutely. It sounds like a healing experience.
yeah, they all got
Mm.
rebooted. Yeah.
Yes, yes, very, very common in awakening. Yeah, very
Okay.
common. Mm.
Okay. So, kind of pivoting for a second. So, how does your background in the corporate world, contribute to your approach as a spiritual awakening coach?
Yeah, that's a good question because I was in the corporate world for a long time and I was in leadership roles and managing big teams, etc. And in a strange way, it has equipped me perfectly because I was mentoring for a long time different individuals, building high performing teams, all of those things. So you can't really do that unless you learn quite a lot about the human psychology, because good coaching is all about helping someone turn the spotlight on themselves. And to do that, you've kind of really got to be able to get into the nitty gritty of what makes them tick without sort of freaking them out. And and that's something I really enjoy. I really enjoy working with people on a very individual basis and making sure that the guidance I'm giving them is tailor made. Some people can go very far very quickly. Other people need to just do one bit at a time. It's really different for everyone, even though the journey is basically the same. The flavors of it, the way it manifests in different individuals can vary quite a lot. So yeah, so I think that just that habit of really working with the individual has served me well.
That's awesome. I love to hear that, and obviously you're a artist, a painter. So I think,
Yeah.
as all of us, we go along our spiritual journeys, we have certain abilities, certain gifts, and we were able to utilize those, like with me, like the music and stuff like that, and hopefully
Mm.
utilize those talents to help humanity. So that's cool. So also your book describes 40 cures for spiritual depression. Can you share a few of these strategies that the listeners might find helpful?
Yeah, sure. So I actually made the decision in the book to include some things that weren't just for the Dark Night of the Soul, because my hope was that anyone who bought the book could continue to use it once they were out of that phase. So it's quite broad ranging. It's got a lot of stuff in there. But just for anyone who might be watching this and going through the Dark Night of the Soul, the spiritual Dark Night in particular, there is one protocol you can use that will really, really help you. And it's very difficult to do, but it's really effective. And that is every single day. And when you feel those dips in the day, the despair, oh my God, this is so difficult. Why am I doing this? You must use a gratitude affirmation. So if you say, I am so grateful for the experience of the dark night of the soul, especially the spiritual one, if you're in that, because that means I am at least 50% integrated with my higher self. I'm halfway through the integration process. And that means, when I get out the other side of this, I'm really on the path to enlightenment. That's when you're really on the path to enlightenment, is the other side of the dark night of the soul. Now, the reason that we do these gratitudes is because your lower mind, the ego and the body, all they can feel is that there's something horrible going on right? So they don't know how to respond to that. They're going to respond in their normal way, which is to kind of panic, to drag you down further. They're trying to, withdraw you from the world, get you depressed, all of this stuff. Whereas if you express it as a positive thing that's happening to you, they will get on board, because the lower mind follows the conscious mind. This has primacy over the lower mind. So that's definitely a technique I would recommend. Gratitude is generally a really helpful all
Oh
the way
yeah.
through. Yeah, that's really helpful. Then the one, anyone who's ever watched any video of mine will know I always slip it in there, is meditation. You must meditate daily, preferably. If you find it difficult, use a mantra, because if your monkey mind is going, your lower
Yeah.
mind is changing. Yeah. If you just use a mantra, um, you know, um, you can say something like, I lead my system with my conscious mind. You could say something like that. And you just keep repeating it. I lead my system with my conscious mind. So not only are you closing out the chatter because there's no room for it to come in, you're also manifesting that desire as well. So it has a double effect.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so meditate daily, and meditate by stealth. Go on nice walks in nature. Listen to music really actively. Put on your favorite album or playlist, and just listen to every word, and that is a form of meditation. So yes, there's that one. And then really, I think people don't realize how important this is, but your diet really affects your awakening. And it's very hard for us in this society. This is again strategies from the teams who are trying to prevent the global awakening. No judgment, that's their job. But if they've really set it up to make it very hard for us, because alcohol is everywhere, meat is everywhere. It's very difficult to avoid these things in our society. Refined sugar is everywhere,
Oh yeah.
and these things, yeah, they will drag your consciousness down. They will prevent your consciousness from ascending. And definitely, it was with meat in particular. Especially if you're buying cheap meat, then it's affecting your karma negatively as well. So really look at your diet, look at your choices.
Yeah, I love that you bring that up. That's a perfect segue for something that I wanted to bring up as well. So when we were emailing each other, I think I told you I was like, it's a new version of me every month or whatever. And so where I'm at along my journey at this moment is something keeps telling me like, build up your light body, because I feel like on the spiritual journey, sometimes your body, you're so focused on your mind and your spirit that you neglect the body. And I was like, yeah, like I need to take more care of this vessel, you know? And so I'm vegetarian for 6 weeks now. I've been vegetarian, no meat. And then
Great.
I've also been finding that, I don't know if you're aware, I don't know if it's the same in London and stuff, but man, in America at least, we're being bombarded and poisoned with metal toxicity. It's in the water, it's in the food, it's in the air. And I started to hear it over
Yes.
and over. And I was like, you know what? I need a detox. So I'm like taking this, I don't know if you can see it, this detox supplement. So that and the vegetarian, I'm really like shedding some weight in the gut area. I feel like I'm like healing my gut, and so that's kind of where I'm at now. So I agree with you. Vegetarian. Are you vegan or vegetarian?
I'm mostly vegetarian. If I'm invited out to dinner, I tend to eat what I'm given, sort of, just to be
Oh yeah,
courteous. I'm,
yeah,
I'm primarily vegetarian. Yeah, but what you're doing is perfect. And also, do you fast at all?
yeah. I do every Friday. I fasting Friday. Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah. Cool. Okay. So, what advice would you give to someone who's currently going through a dark night of the soul, and they're struggling with it, and they just don't know how to find their way out?
Yeah, it's really hard. And if anyone is watching this, I really empathize with you. And you know what? I didn't get through my first dark night. I went backwards, which is what happens if we don't push through. And it was only when I came out that my team started teaching me how you get through. So I think so I could have the experience, of a normal dark night. So yeah, so there are things you can do. The first thing is it's really, really important to rest. You really must sleep a lot. Don't feel bad about it. Often with the spiritual dark night of the soul, the universe has arranged things in such a way that we can take a bit of time out. So if you have that opportunity, you should take it. And even if you're in a family or in a household or you've got a partner, just say to them, I really need to rest at this time. I'm not well, I need to rest. Don't be apologetic for it. So that's the first thing. But the second thing is also you must meditate. It's literally the only way you will get through to the other side, because it basically triggers at 50% integration and we come out at 65% integration. And the only way that you integrate, when I say integration, I mean the conscious mind with the higher self, the super conscious mind. This is what we're integrating. So the only way that you're going to continue that integration is by meditation. And it can be very difficult for people because sometimes they've got to the dark night of the soul and they've never established a meditation practice. And I was one of those people because it was very easy for me. I was getting all this communication. So I never taught myself to meditate, right? So I appreciate it's difficult, but honestly, just sound baths, guided meditations, even just take a bath and listen to music and just really listen to the music, like I said before, is a form of meditation. If you can muster up the energy to do anything creative like painting or whatever, that is a form of meditation. So as much as you can bear to do, even if it's passive and you're just listening to it, do as much as you can, and that is what will get you through. That and the gratitudes, of course.
I love that. Yeah, that's great advice. So beyond overcoming spiritual depression, what transformations or positive outcomes have you observed in individuals who complete their dark night of the soul?
Oh, honestly, it is absolutely transformational. It's a really real rite of passage. And I have people that I've coached who've come to me after the dark night of the soul. So they've gone through that without my guidance. But some people have been in it for 10 years because they didn't know what it was they needed to do. So they kind of found a way through, because it's very difficult when you meditate, you don't connect. So if you're used to having a connection, you can't feel it, you stop meditating. And this is why people don't manage to get through it, you see. So yeah, so when you get out the other side and everything just sort of crackles back into life, what people typically find is this is when communication really comes online for them. They really start to connect to their guides. They can hear their guides. They're really getting all of their inputs. So that in itself is a massive shift that is very, very helpful. And also what people start to find as they go into advanced learning, higher learning, which is the next phase, their consciousness is starting to very naturally elevate. And that's because they've kind of done a lot of inner work by that point, but by default, the meditation kind of helps with the inner work too. So you're sort of doing two things in parallel. And so when their consciousness starts to ascend, what you get is at the highest level is absolute clarity, but you don't have the volatility that you have in the connection phase. So in the connection phase, you're sort of on this big roller coaster, but when you get into advanced learning, it's much more steady. You feel, well, it's inner peace. That's what you're moving towards at that point.
Mm,
Absolutely transformational.
I love it. Okay. So in your experience, why do you think so many people are undergoing spiritual awakenings right now? And what does this mean for the current state of the world and the cycle of time that we're living in?
So it's absolutely planned. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of test awakenings. So in the States, we have 6% of the adult population somewhere on the awakening path right now. That obviously includes people who might be in very early awakening. They're not going to have their conscious awakening for a few years, but they're starting to sow the seeds. And the goal is that within 2 to 3 years, that we will have at least 10% of the adult population in the US waking up. I think that will actually be bigger than that because we're moving really quickly. And I'm seeing clients that I've been working with over time who were moving at kind of a standard speed and now accelerating as they're coming into the final stages of awakening. It's really speeding up. So there's a lot of fast tracking that's happening. And basically the reason for it is, do you know, this is a special mission. What we're doing in this dimension at this time on this planet has not been done anywhere in the multiverse before. And the reason that we're doing it, that we have so many senior souls incarnating right now. So half a percent of awakeners half a percent of the adult population in the US are Bodhisattva souls. So they've completed at least 98% of their soul lessons. And the reason that we have that is because the incumbents, the teams who are trying to prevent us getting to enlightenment, have done a really good job. they've absolutely created the conditions for anti-enlightenment, and we basically, in the higher dimensions, we're managing the games, we're managing our teams, our missions. We run models to see what the likely outcomes are of where we are. And prior to the instigation of this big awakening mission, what we saw was that we were on a path to nuclear Armageddon. So,
Oh
so
yeah.
that was a very real probability for us that this planet would be destroyed. And the fact of the matter is, we love this planet. You have Sophia and Omo, two of the most senior members of the council, are actually the sponsors of the Earth project in all of the 5 game dimensions. And it was decided that we didn't want to let this planet just die. And fortunately for us, because we're all friends up there, even though down here, we feel like there's quite a lot of resistance and opposition, we're all friends up there. The guys on the other team agreed with us because they want to move on too. Because the things that come next are wonderful. There's all these future chapters in this dimension that are just so exciting and wonderful, and we all want to get there. But as I said, within the rules of the game, they have to use the negative energy. They're honor bound to do it. They can't not do it. So they're kind of saying to us, guys, stop us. Please stop us from destroying the planet. So we got special dispensation from Athena, not only from Athena, but also from the universe outside of ours, which created our universe. We got permission from the steering group out there that helps us run things. And they said, yeah, we're going to do a special mission. So that's why we're seeing, I mean, when I was awakening and they showed me what the plan was, I was like, well, this won't happen in my lifetime. It's huge. And then literally in 2 years, I've seen what I thought would take maybe 6 or 7 years to happen. So I honestly think in my lifetime, at the very least, we will all accept as a society that we're souls having a human experience. If nothing else, society will be geared that way. But we have a very clear target, which is we believe from the models that we run that if we can get a third of adults in the West to at least 80% integration through the awakening process, then that basically is the tipping point. That's the point at which we have more positive energy than negative, and that we start to reverse these spirals that we see.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I'd like to just tell the listeners, yeah, like I know these times are challenging and there's a lot of pain and suffering in the world, and I know times can be tough, but I want the listeners to understand, like try and see the beauty in the pain, try and see things are changing for the better, and we might go through that darkness, but things are changing for the better, and it reminds me of there's a lot of ancient indigenous prophecies, the Hopi the indigenous people of the Americas have different prophecies. There's the eagle and the condor, and there's the Pachacuti prophecy, and we're entering that age of Aquarius, right? And it's
Yeah.
the golden age of humanity, and so it really is a beautiful time, and I just see it as a blessing. I'm thankful to be alive during this time to see the transition. So just try and be positive and take care of yourself.
And the models show us now that there's zero chance really of us now going into nuclear Armageddon. We've already prevented that, right? So we don't need to worry. Is the only way is up from here. And anyone who is awakening now, you have got a mission. You are part of this. You have come to lead the way. You have come to do something big in this life that is going to totally transform this planet. And I'm grateful to every awakener I meet, because I know how hard the journey is and I know what they've committed to. And that to me is just such a wonderful thing, that someone would put themselves into such a difficult environment with such a difficult task, and yet everyone I meet, the positivity is overwhelming. So if people just keep going, do it at your own pace, don't beat yourself up if you take a misstep or you take some time out. It doesn't matter, right? The fact that you've even come to do this thing is already in itself a massive thing for the planet.
That's so beautiful, man. Well, I'm curious to ask you too, what are your thoughts on AI and artificial intelligence?
Well, to I've got a video on this. AI will save us, basically. Ultimately, AI will save us. So that doesn't mean we won't go through some teething problems. But the if you think about potential, what do we want? We want people to reach their potential, right? Everyone at some point is going to be going through the awakening process, and they need to reach their potential. That's what they came to do. AI facilitates that in all sorts of ways. And it also almost certainly pushes us towards a universal income, universal basic income, which means that people can do things that they can't do today, which, feed their children, drink clean water, live in sanitary conditions, actually have a house, as opposed to, live on the streets, as you even see in the States, which is one of the richest countries in the world. And just boggles my mind, to be honest, that this could be the case. So yeah, so AI facilitates a lot of this, and it changes the nature of government. That's the key. So if you think about how you would program an AI, think a long way into the future, right? Think 200 years into the future. If we program AI to be the administrators of our politics, right? And you're not going to program an AI to be jealous, greedy, fearful, any of these things. You're going to program that AI to be compassionate, just, all of the good stuff. And that completely takes the ego out of politics straight away, out of all organizations, in fact. So automatically you just have a better world.
I love that. I love that so much. Obviously, I'm sure you see it online too. I hear different opinions on that, and so I'd love to just end it on a high note. So can you send the listeners out there, a final message of love and healing, especially the ones who might be struggling out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, this is a message from the council, and this is what they've been telling me from day one: is you can't get it wrong. You cannot get this thing wrong. Everyone worries that they're doing it wrong. They're going too slow. They made a mistake. They don't understand. They're not doing their mission soon enough or big enough. And it's not the case. Don't worry at all. Our teams know us intimately well. We have incarnated with these teams managing us for thousands of lifetimes. They can predict what you're going to do, how you're going to behave down to the nth degree. No one ever surprises them. So whatever is happening to you internally, externally, it is meant to be. All you have got to do is trust your intuition, go with the flow, and just follow the signs, and you will be absolutely fine.
That's beautiful. I love that. So, all right. Well, thank you so much, Sophia, for meeting with me today. Thank you for providing such great wisdom and insights on this episode. I think the listeners will take a lot out of this episode. So, I also want to thank the listeners for sticking around to the end. So, once again, please tell everyone where to find your information, and I'll also add it to the description of the video.
Yes. So YouTube is Sophia Persephone Awakening, and you'll find me on Instagram under the same handle, and my website is sophiapersephone.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.